McCaskill, what do you think?
Well, I understand why this has happened, and I understand how it's happened. Those of us who know Joe Biden and have known him for a long time, it's a little hard because this is Joe.
He's a really nice guy.
He just always, he never is one of those, shake hands and look past your shoulder to the next person, which, by the way, is the norm in politics with people who have achieved what Joe Biden has achieved in the political realm. He never looks past you to the next person. He wants to look inside of you and really hear you. And he used physical contact to do that with men and women. Joe Biden is no predator. This is not sexual.
Nope.
This is who he is. So I get that it's made some people uncomfortable, and I respect that. If you've got a real thing about your personal boundary space, I understand that, and I hear that, and I think Joe Biden has heard it. But let's move on now. Let's move on, and he has acknowledged he's going to try to change and really be respectful of people's personal space. And I think that's appropriate that he's done that. But he never did this from a bad place.
No.
He always did this from a good place. And I think that's why it's hard for those of us who know him well.
Claire, first of all, thank you for adding to the fact that proof that Joe Biden is a human being. That's who he is, and that's who he has always been. But what happens in these media feeding frenzies over a legitimate issue,
totally legitimate
issue, but a feeding frenzy occurs, and we sometimes misplace our priorities as an industry, when in fact, for 2 weeks, the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women's Act has been held up from being reauthorized by pressure from the National Rifle Association. That's a piece of legislation that was written about 25 years ago with the assistance, the great assistance of then the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Joseph R. Biden.
True story. I wanted to start a domestic violence unit in the prosecutor's office in the 90s. I didn't have resources to do victim advocates. The only reason we were able to get that unit started was because of the Violence Against Women Act that passed. And it began a whole new chapter of going after domestic violence in the Kansas City area. Joe Biden was at the center of that effort. And he needs to pivot and talk about those things he's done that have made a difference.
Which is great.
And
I am very surprised that Joe Biden and Biden's team did not have a plan for when this story came out. This has been somewhat of an open secret in Washington. Biden being a little handsy in the photo lines, and they could have been prepared with something that was more authentic than a video where you kind of are wondering, why isn't he just doing an interview and sitting down?
Here's the problem.
And then but there are ways that he could absolve himself if this is something that's only been in public, and photographing that secret Senate slush fund where harassment victims. I doubt that Joe Biden has ever paid out any money, but his office could be putting forward examples.
I don't know. In this climate, I feel like a lot of men have nowhere to go when something like this happens. And what seems unfair about this is, again, we're not talking about sex. We're not talking about harassment. None of these women have said it felt sexual. They said it was a little weird. Biden said, I'll always believe that government and life is about connection. And this is a man who lost his wife and baby in a car accident. This is a man who lost his son to brain cancer. This is a man whose family has faced challenges, and they're choosing potentially to jump back into what is usually a nightmare for families running for office. Claire, you know a thing or two about it. And I got to tell you, if you can go on national television and talk about Joe Biden putting his hands on your back, and now you're demanding an apology from him because what he said on Twitter is not enough, you probably could have told him in real time. And he probably would have said, I'm sorry, I was trying to be nice. And it probably could have been finished right there. Like, come on, we're not snowflakes. Okay, are we? Are you a snowflake, Claire?
Pretty sure I'm not.
Okay, so I got to tell you, we have to decide what we get upset about and what's a national story. And I think if the campaign did what you were saying, it would make it even bigger. At this point, look, he's saying he gets it. Fine. I still hope he gives me a big hug. I'm good. Mike, what did you want to say?
Well, Elise, to the point that you raised, if he came on this show or any other show, someone is bound to ask, well, how many women have you touched and grabbed? I mean, the questions would be ludicrous. They would be ludicrous. Joe Biden is who he is. Bottom line, he is a genuinely affectionate, caring human being. And Claire nailed it. He is in a no-contact eye nation. Everybody's staring at their phones. He is an eye-contact guy. He is literally, figuratively, a hands-on guy. How are you doing?
Yeah. Bring up personal space sometime else, but don't inject it into a presidential campaign.
Especially, I mean, I don't
make it sound dirty.
And it feels a little bit like some of these folks are trying to help another candidate. Maybe not true, and I respect that it made some people uncomfortable. I get that. But really, let's talk about stuff like how we're going to help women going forward in this country. Let's start talking about the stuff that are really going to matter in this presidential.
Let's talk about
By the way,
pay.
and we got a guy in the Oval Office that changed wives like other men change shirts.
And that's exactly why we need to talk
about
it. Because what standards are we
for a
holding
younger
him to?
model?
If Donald Trump was behaving this way, we would still be talking about it and debating. I mean, we need to debate what he's done in a way egregious, horrible form.
I need to take control of this situation.
Sorry.
Coming up, she said, I'm the one who... All right. She said she is not interested in entering the presidential primary as Joe